Okay, cool. That actually worked. So, yeah, awesome. I was just really, really frustrated, struggling. A minute ago, I was setting up I'm going to say it wrong, an RTMP server, but an Nginx RTMP server for restreaming, for the sole purpose of the fact that then there's no potential that you could get kind of shadow banned. I know it's being paranoid, but the whole thing there is that I've heard rumors that when you restream using services like Restream, that these platforms will sort of shadow ban you in a little way because they'll see the same IP addresses from Restream. Also, it's just fun to set up and have all the control that I want in regards to that. I am going to need to open... I doubt anyone's going to jump onto YouTube. But I just wanted to test this out, watch a video about testing, and kind of talk through some of the things. This is a really great video about testing with a controversial title, right? Testing is bad for developer productivity. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to go through it, give you all some of my thoughts, and if anyone shows up in chat, we can also have a nice discussion about it, hopefully. But first, I need to shoot stuff out to social media. It should be a short stream today, hopefully, because I do not have a lot of time today. So it might just be me talking to myself, which is totally fine, honestly. Let me see here. I'm gonna get everything pushed out to social media, that kind of stuff, and then try to get... I need to see a merged chat just in case someone hops onto the YouTube. Am I even... Please use a keyframe frequency of 4 seconds or less. Currently, keyframes are not being sent often enough, which can cause buffering. Oh, I need to send more keyframes? Oh, man. Does this mean am I technically live right now on YouTube? I'm not even sure. Yeah, I am live. Okay, supposedly, I'm not setting enough keyframes. Please use a keyframe frequency of 4 seconds or less. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what that means. I wonder what's going on there. Yeah, I'll have to play with that and see if I can figure it out. See, that's why stuff like this is really good. You can experiment. I'll have to look at my, obviously not on stream, look at my Nginx settings. Could be chunk size too. Wonder if that's part of it. I have no idea. This may be a complete failure, but it's fine. At least I tried it out. Yeah, my bitrate's low as well. There's some goofy stuff going on. This is what happens when you experiment. Let me see. I gotta fix this. I'll get stuff sent out. I have a feeling people just aren't gonna show up, and I'm totally down with that. I'm down with people just not tuning in. Maybe while I'm testing this, I can go back and watch this later and just see if it looks correct. Because they're saying I'm not sending enough keyframes, so I can mess with that. There we go. Okay, I got that. I will shoot out. Yeah, YouTube is really cranky with me, saying that I'm going to cause buffering. I guess we'll find out. Yeah, we'll is it RMTP? I always have that problem. RTMP, that's why. And that's honestly why my config file was set up wrong, because I typoed that. find something right here. Don't want that near my hand. I have a feeling I'm dropping the frames maybe. Let me see how OBS is looking. OBS is looking healthy, so I have a feeling it's my Nginx server that's causing some goofiness. Quite possibly. And this is how we learn. We fail miserably and get back up on our feet and fail miserably again. I'll shoot this up the Discord. Yeah, it's still complaining about my keyframes in the YouTubes. We'll see. Again, I'm just gonna probably watch these streams later and then see if I can mess with my keyframes. If there is a way. There's a will, there's a way. Oh, jeez. Okay, yeah. How do I put myself? Oh, yeah, do not disturb. Okay, links sent out. I don't have my chat prepped yet. I just want to get that merged chat just in case somebody decides to say hi on YouTube. I doubt it. And it could be buffering so bad. I mean, who knows? So as far as, do I have to show moderator badges? Yes. Yes. I am curious if can I launch it? I do not. Okay, can I just launch the chat box? Okay, and then I want to test something. Wow, and I can't spell test. Did that work? Where's the launch chat box? Oh gosh, everything's failing. Here it is. Okay, test. It's working. I'm not gonna watch the other. I'm gonna leave this merged chat up, I guess, and then hope that everything good in this world that I don't have to moderate, because the merged chat just lets me see it. I can't like moderate it. Okay, yeah, test. Not that, again, I'm honestly hoping no one comes in, just in case it's super bad. Like there's a lot of latency or problems, because YouTube's claiming I'm dropping packets. Twitch is showing kind of some of the worst connectivity I think I've seen. Yeah, it's showing, I think that's a bad bit rate. It's hard to say at this point. So we'll just get into it. I'll make sure that I mute the music and all that kind of jazz. Pro streamers liked your post. I'm sure they did. Not. Yeah, it's really complaining about my keyframe frequency of 4 seconds or less. It claims I'm not sending keyframes often enough, and that was at 12. Maybe it's just because the server's just getting started. Maybe it'll stop whining. I don't know. I followed a guide. I've done this like 4 times. Set up an Nginx server at an RTMP RMTP a couple of times, and every time I have to look up a guide because I'm a fake. I'm a fake. I'm a troll fake. Yeah, I'll leave these. Let's see. I'll leave these up, and then I'll make the merged chat the main thing I can see. And then if someone's naughty and I have to fix something. So yeah, I wanted to talk about this video. I watched it back when it published. What was that, like almost half a year ago now? This is, I think her name's Trisha Gee. Yeah, Trisha Gee. And Continuous Delivery. Continuous Delivery is a fantastic channel. This channel is great for, I think, anyone in software at all. It doesn't have to be a tester, just anyone. There's so much great advice here. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say provocative, but definitely things that'll challenge possibly things that you've done or learned while doing software development. Delicious, life-giving water. Test. And most people who are familiar with this channel probably know, I believe his name is Dave Farley. Dave Farley is incredible, very prolific in the space of software engineering, continuous integration and continuous delivery. There's a lot of people that use that word and don't know what it means. And I think I would put myself in that category for a long time. I put myself in that category of someone who didn't understand what it really meant to have CI/CD. And yeah, this channel just gives great advice. It does tend to skew towards the developer, the developer side, I would say. It skews more that way. So there's going to be things often that they say that, like, for a software tester, they'd be like, oh yeah, obvious. Where it's kind of like they're trying to advocate for things. They're trying to kind of present these ideas from the developer standpoint. So there's some stuff I know at times that Trisha will say, or Dave Farley will say, and I'm like, yeah, I know. Welcome to our world. I apologize if I say that too much, because there's a good chance I may just say that a lot, because again, to us, I would say software testers, QA analysts, SDETs, whatever, these things are either really obvious to us because it's a part of our day job, or are things because of what we're involved in and what's important to us. May seem really super obvious in my opinion, but I thought this was a great video. I watched it like half a year ago, so it may be fresh, not fresh enough in my mind. Some of my reaction may be like sincere. I remember enjoying the video. I remember being challenged by it. I remember thinking it's things that I would want to bring back to a dev team. So I'm hoping it's enjoyable. And this is kind of, for me, even just a test run of a format that you can see that I searched for it. what a fake person. No. Well, yeah, I searched for it because I was trying to find the video. And for some reason, if you look up CI/CD on here, it brings up everything but their channel called Continuous Delivery. And I need to remember, just look up Continuous Delivery. Great channel though. I'll put a link for the original video down below on the YouTube video. I'll try to add it to the video on Twitch, even though those tend to not stay up very long, and I don't plan on like trying to keep them long on Twitch. They'll probably live long on YouTube, maybe, if in probably edited form, I'm guessing, if this is actually decent. Even though, again, it sounds like YouTube saying that I'm dropping keyframes, which no bueno. And I have a feeling it's how the Nginx is set up, how I have my Nginx set up, because on the OBS side, it's beautiful, exactly what I want to see. But on the other ends, it's looking a little meh. But I'm gonna kill the tunes, and we'll jump in here and see what Trish has to say about testing and if it's bad for developer productivity. Again, she's often advocating for testing from the standpoint of advocating to developers, not trying to convince us that testing, as in testers, software testers, that testing is important. Because us is like, yeah, it's important to us because it's our job. Maybe like, is writing code bad for, SDET or quality QA analyst productivity? Be like, yeah, probably, technically, I guess. But no, this is a great video. That makes it sound like I think it's not relevant, and it's very relevant. We'll just jump in.
We've all thought it, we've probably all said it, and we certainly know of organisations that think it. In this video, I want to look at what makes testing bad for productivity and what we can do about it.
How dare you? What we could do about it? Fire all QA analysts and all SDETs and all quality software people. Or let AI do it, right? We're gonna let AI do our testing.
Hello, I'm Trisha G. Welcome to
Hi, Trisha.
the Continuous Delivery channel. If this is your first time here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you like the video, please press like.
Yeah, I would suggest that. This channel's great. Highly suggest that. Obviously, I've clearly already clicked like. I've clearly already subscribed.
Now, before Dave kicks me off the channel before I've even had a chance to get started,
Dave would never do that. Never do that to you.
I want to caveat what I said in the introduction about tests perhaps leading to poor developer productivity. There are some practices and some patterns which get in the way of us being productive as developers linked to testing. These kinds of things can lead to frustration and making us feel like we're not getting the job done properly. The first pattern I want to explore is writing tests for existing code. Now, this existing code might be something that we wrote a week ago, or it might be something that someone else wrote 3 years ago. Certainly the latter case is more challenging, but even the former case where we wrote it a week ago, there's a good chance we've forgotten what we did and why we did it.
Yeah, welcome to our world again. Welcome to the world of an SDET or a QA engineer. We're always writing code in this way. Always writing test code, that is, in this way. Always kind of trailing a bit behind.
Writing tests for existing code is challenging.
It is. That's why it's our jobs. That's why it's so hard. I noticed a typo there in existing. Surprised they didn't test their video graphics. But yes, writing tests for existing code is very difficult. That's why there's a big need still for software testers, for QA engineers and analysts, because writing tests for existing code is difficult. Because I think I remember now where she's going with this clearly. Because I don't want to bury the lead, but this would then lead us to like ideas around things like TDD. The idea that we're going to write a failing test first, red, green, and cycle through that. But let's let her cook.
We don't always know or remember what the code is supposed to do. We don't always know why it works in a particular way. We don't necessarily know which decisions were made and which trade-offs were made. And so we don't always know which tests to write for the code. What's usually more challenging about writing tests for existing code, particularly code that's not already tested, is that this code is usually very difficult to test. It's often difficult to poke it with the kinds of values that we want to poke it with and request their answers from it in order to ascertain what happened and did it work correctly. Code which has not been written with testing in mind is difficult to test. Dave and I would probably argue that the thing you need to do is write your tests first. Therefore, any code that you write afterwards will by definition be easier to test.
Yeah, see, TDD. Still controversial for various reasons. I've got the TDD book right here in my bookshelf. It's TDD by example by I believe it's Kent Beck. I believe this is the book that I have on my shelf. Test-driven development by example. I believe this is the book. Yes, Mr. Kent Beck. This book is fantastic. It has its detractors. It has people that don't like it, but I think this book is great. It was very challenging. I had a former boss that went through this book, quite a bit of this book with me, and challenged me. We were writing something for our company, and this book really helped me to break away from the strong ownership of code I had written. Where you're really scared. You're scared to delete anything. Like if it works, you're just scared to delete it. In this, because you're refactoring constantly, because you're writing a test, you're trying to get that test to pass. You get the test to pass, and then you want to write your next test. So there's that red green. Anyone who's familiar, I'm preaching to the choir of any TDD person. They're like, the doy, we get this. But it's just because of that. One thing I noticed is my code became so disposable. I didn't like hoard my code anymore where I was so scared like, oh, this works. I need to remember how I did this. Because you're refactoring and cycling so much that you don't get so attached. You don't get so attached to that code and so scared if it changes. Because again, on the flip side, you have a test that tells you that it still continues to work the way it does, even though you've refactored it to factor in now the new test. You might break one of your old tests by getting a new test to pass, but that tells you that either that test is no longer valid or you've broken some requirement or functionality or something you wanted the test to do. Or, the functionality or the feature or whatever you're working on to do. You need it to still do that thing. You need it to still, that aspect of it, whatever you're trying to assert on, as she says. I don't think she used the word assert. That's what I would use. Arrange, act, assert. I'm a huge fan of, by the way. It is a great way. It's the way to write testing, in my opinion. If you can't fit in those boxes, your test may be too big, complex, flaky, whatever. If you can't arrange, so you're getting stuff ready, you're prepping the test, you're acting, you're doing things within the system, against a service, and then you're asserting. Did what I expect to happen with the system or the UI or the component or whatever actually come true? Was the user able to get the end result? And how do I prove that? How do I assert on that? So fantastic book, my opinion. I'm really strongly considering going back to it. This book is great. I'm trying to remember what the code examples are in. I want to say they're actually in Java. I could just be having Uncle Bob flashbacks. The founder and director of Three Rivers Institute. Yeah, I think there's some people here that bad Kindle format. What the difference between a methodologist and a terrorist? Wow. Keeping it light. These are some interesting. A lot of people don't like the digital version. That seems to be the main beef. Really, they found it confusing. That's interesting. I feel like I'm not a really strong technical developer, and I didn't find it that confusing. I felt it hard to grasp because I had learned a certain way to write code. But I think this book is great. I think it's worth physical copy. I think it's worth every penny as you get that paperback. Looks like a 40. I don't think I paid 40. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Biden. This recession killing our book prices. I'm a big proponent of TDD. I know it doesn't work for everyone, but I think it's a great place to go to challenge the way that you look at your code and to challenge the ownership over your code and the value it has. It'll reduce the value of your code to you, so you're braver and make bolder decisions, and I think in turn time move faster and are more comfortable refactoring. That's my soapbox. I'll kick it away, and I'm gonna let Trisha probably say many of the same things.
This isn't always a luxury that we have when we're working on a legacy code base. So writing tests for existing code is a challenging thing. The key is to write tests as close as possible to the time that we wrote the production code.
Agreed.
Ideally, perhaps beforehand, but if not beforehand, then certainly close enough after writing the production code that we can remember what it does, and that if we need to make some changes to the production code to make it easier to test.
And applying to software testers, I think we can do the similar thing. We can follow a model where we're trying to write tests as soon as possible, and it's okay if those tests don't perfectly match the functionality. I will often, this is my secret sauce. I'm on a 0 view stream, right? And there's no one viewing the stream, maybe one like lurker. I'm going to give away part of my secret sauce here. So I will often, very, very often, to stay ahead, to shift as far left as I can. My in-ears keep popping out, so I think I need bigger earbuds. One thing I will do, or make a very strong effort to do, is to write failing tests as soon as a sprint starts. If I'm not coming from behind, if there's stories and requirements in any type of documentation, I will write failing integration, API. If I'm touching component tests, I will write failing tests in a branch as soon as possible, as soon as I can. Because even if it's not real and those tests are failing, and they're integration tests, UI tests, whatever, end-to-end tests, whatever I'm trying to cover based on the requirements and the documentation and the stories, often in Jira. A lot of the teams I work with are in Jira. Now I'm starting to think about testing logic very soon, very, very soon. And questions may even come up. Questions about, do we have access to these schemas yet if I'm testing an API? Do we, starting to look at maybe the mock-ups of the UI and think about where I'm going to be clicking and things like that maybe. But you actually start to think about testing then. This, to me, sometimes it seems so obvious, like, duh, this is a truism. This is a truism. But then when I'm brought in a lot of times to teams and to orgs that are struggling in testing, their testing people are basically operating the dev team supposedly is Scrum, is what they'll say. But then the testing people the testing, like the QA engineers, the SDETs are often operating like waterfall in the sense that the dev team kind of goes dark for part of the sprint. And then there's a part of the sprint where those things start to roll out and get deployed to dev for them to test, for the testing folks to start testing. Now, maybe half the sprint's gone, maybe 2 or 3 days, and the developer's then going to move on to something else. And now somebody is starting to think about how to test this. They're starting to manually test it. They're starting to write automated tests. That's too late. It's too late. You should have a test case written already, even if it's not completely right, because you're at least thinking about the testing logic. You're starting to think about where are the seams, where are the concerns and risks. If I'm writing an automated test, what am I going to need to test this? Am I going to need a new command if I'm writing Cypress, for example? Am I going to need new commands to call this new endpoint? So you write it up and you mock it, and even if it's kind of wrong, and you can even set up mocks, you can set up intercepts and do all that stuff. Be like, I think they're going to make this kind of call, whatever. But the beauty there is now you are ahead, and now you just need to make some small changes. It is very red. The red-green is a slower cycle for us at our level compared to a developer, because yes, we at least, that red-green is like, it's red until we get the real thing. Then it's now green. We can make it green. But at the very least, you have a red-green cycle rather than you just have a green cycle. You're always behind, and you're always the bottleneck of trying to push things out. So yeah, again, slide that soapbox away. That's a little bit of my secret sauce that's made me have a lot of great opportunity, a lot of really happy clients, a lot of really, really happy dev teams. There's dev teams that have pushed and fought and didn't agree or didn't think it was possible or whatever. But you got to give it that opportunity. Do anything you can, any little thing you can to shift left and start writing those failing tests as an SDET, as a QA engineer as soon as possible. It's like a shift left kind of slower red-green cycle compared to true TDD. You're not writing the code that you're testing, but you can write the code that will test that code, or write manual tests and at least start thinking, what are all the things I want to cover? What are all the risks? Yada, yada, right?
We can do that without jeopardizing some feature that's been used by users for 3 years or so. The next pattern that I want to look at is, it is hard to write tests, even if we're ready, willing, and
Yes.
able, and we're about to sit down and write.
Yes, writing tests is hard. Yes, that's why there's people like us who it's our job. It's our job to test applications, because it's really difficult. It's really difficult when you've created something, you've written it, for you to think of the flaws and the risks, because you don't want people telling you that your baby's ugly. And that's not what QA or SDETs are for. My belief, again, cooperative. We should be cooperating. Our definition of done is the best, highest quality products and services to meet a customer's needs, a user base needs, a system's needs, right? But yes, it is very hard. And I think that's why there's still a great need for us.
Write the test for our code. It's difficult to know what the test should be, how to test the code, and what should the code do under certain circumstances, and which circumstances should we be looking for in order to test that the code works correctly under certain circumstances.
Yes, and there's ways to tackle some of these, I think, at least from a testing focused standpoint, from our standpoint, from a quality software quality standpoint. What should be tested? Risk-based analysis. Rex Black was probably, at least the person I know, most prolific for risk-based testing, where you make a matrix. You get a spreadsheet, and you're gonna use a formula like how likely is something to happen, like how detrimental, I believe, is like the formula, right? Like how likely is this to happen? How detrimental it would be to our company? Then there's a score, or to the users, or to whatever. Could we get in legal trouble? Could we all go to jail if this happened? And so you make a matrix of those risks. Excuse me. You make a matrix of all those risks, and then you're able to say, these are the most important things for us to test. These things are less important and can go into our testing backlog and maybe never get touched. And then you can do a further, from an automated testing standpoint, you can do further, like how difficult is this to automate? How expensive is it going to be to maintain? So you create like the next layer then, because then one of those really high level tests may always be manual. And it's such a bitter pill to swallow. This test may always be manual, and you have to live with it because it might be too expensive to automate, or too expensive to maintain, or too flaky, or unreliable, because that's another factor I'll use. Like, how flaky is this test going to be? And why? Like, is there big timing issues? There are multiple integrations that we don't control that we shouldn't mock because it's not going to tell us that the system's actually reliable end to end. Things like that will help you decide what type of test is needed. Again, same thing. Use some of those risk factors, flakiness, cost to develop, cost to maintain when it comes to tests will help a lot. How should the code behave? That should be in the requirements, in my opinion. What kind of problems might occur? That's that risk-based analysis that I just talked about. But how should the code behave? That should be in requirements. How is this supposed to manifest itself? I understand if you're a startup, this may not be, but you should have something so that, especially your testing people, have something to aim at, to know if you can accept a story. So yeah, that's requirements, in my opinion, and documentation, like diagrams, user personas and stories. This is what our user needs to do in the system, and then you write a test for it. Whether it's manual or automated, and then they can't do that in the system, then the requirements have been violated, or the expectation of the system. Because that's what automated testing is, right? This is our understanding of how the system should behave, the things it should offer to a user, and the capabilities. Violates those things, then there is a regression or a failure of the system to provide and those things. Whether it's just a microservice, yada yada. Let's let her cook.
Circumstances. It's hard. It requires a lot of thinking. However, thinking is our job. This is what we do. Thinking about what the code does when the user does something weird, or what the code does when the connection goes down, that's something we're going to have to do whether we're writing a test for it or whether we're writing the code itself. This is valuable thinking time that is part of our job. And if we do this thinking during the time of writing the test, then presumably it will take less time to think about it when we're writing the production code.
Yep, I agree. Again, that's very TDD. Think about those sorts of things early. Make the system testable. Make sure there's hooks in there that make sense, that aren't security vulnerability. Things that you're going to need. Totally agree. 100%. 120%. Because it's difficult. It's really difficult. And the earlier you can think about that, both the developer and the testers, developers and testers, and even like your system engineer type people and your DevOps people, they should be thinking about what are the things that we're going to have to do to support this. And I personally think that should all be part of your definition of done. I don't think you're done until that thing is pretty much deployed to prod and working. There's too many teams I've seen, their definition of done is like, there's a pull request. It's like, no. And now your testing people, are going to have to chew it up too, and make sure it meets the requirements, make sure it, meets the user needs, things like that.
On top of that, we get the added bonus of we start writing down the questions that we have. What should it do under these circumstances? How should it behave when something odd happens? And
again, hopefully that's during like your grooming and planning phase. Hopefully you're like hashing out these kind of questions, thinking about these kind of tests. In my opinion too, in my experience, this should be collaborative here. I know she's trying to, again, be more, well, it's collaborative from the sense that it's gonna bode both for both sides of this aspect, the development and the testing side, to collaborate, because the developer's going to tell you, here's the things I'm going to unit test and the things I'm worried about, and then the QA analyst or SDET's going to say, these are the things I'm worried about, and the developer will say, I didn't think about that, and vice versa. Tester can say, I didn't even think about that interaction with that microservice or whatever because I didn't know. I don't have enough technical understanding, but now I know maybe in my Cypress test or Playwright test, I need to intercept that and have it fail sometimes. Have that service go down. Even though it's always good and it's up, I can intercept that call and just make sure that what you're covering in unit testing is also covered at the integration level. It's a great opportunity for testing to be that much better. The unit tests will get better. The component tests will get better if your devs are writing component tests like Jest, things like that, or Cypress component. And then every integration layer is going to get better. Your API, microservices, UI, end to end. If you're doing UX, usability, things like that. It's all going to get better because you're going to collaborate and reveal things and help each other think of things that you wouldn't have thought of that aren't just in the requirements, but maybe expand on that. You're going to cover those high level risks.
We've written those down in the form of an automated test and documented the decisions we've taken. When the user puts some malformed input in, then the code should give this kind of error message. When the connection is down, then the code should do this. So this is now documented, it's readable by other developers, and moreover, this is documentation which is run by a continuous integration server regularly. So the CI server is telling us your assumptions are still correct and the code still works the way you thought it did.
And I would put a caveat here again. They tend to lean very much like all your testing should be automated from again, very much from a developer advocating standpoint. My opinion, there's going to be tests that are, well, not my opinion, from my experience, been doing this for like 13 years. My experience, there's things that you're going to want to test that are too expensive, costly to either maintain or write, too flaky to have as an automated test and to rely on. My experience, have a build acceptance test that is like your gold standard, your gold flippin' standard for testing. Flippin'. But it should be your gold standard for testing. Okay. These are the tests you rely on. These are the tests you would let watch your kids. Right? These are the tests you would trust to water your plant when you're on vacation or feed your cat. These are the tests that are the bomb diggity best tests that you have. That's your build acceptance. That's what's run in CI/CD constantly, at least from an integration level. I'm talking above unit, above even component is where things get murky now. Components have made things, because I've been on jobs and contracts where I'm writing component tests in Jest or Cypress. I've been in other jobs where it's like, no, QA doesn't touch those, which is fine, honestly. QA doesn't touch those. The developers have to write unit tests for the microservices and the interfaces and whatever, and they write their component tests for new components. And then QA takes on from there. They test the deployed microservice. They test the deployed UI components, right? They test the integrated system. But regardless of that, right? That build acceptance suite should be so reliable. But what we all learn is that, tests don't show us the absence of bugs. And hopefully I said that right. It doesn't prove there are no bugs in the system or defects or issues or bad interactions. It does tell us that it has not regressed. I think that's really important. Really, really important to point out, is that the system has not regressed. But beyond that, there's going to be tests, I think, beyond that, like gold standard, there are going to be manual tests that you have to run, at least for regressions, for releases, unless you're really lucky. If you have like an amazingly designed system, amazing, there is a chance, I guess, you can get away being fully automated. I haven't worked at that place yet. Maybe it's Google, maybe it's AWS, whatever. It's one of those elite dev places, right? It's just not common in the real world for most of us. There's going to be manual tests that you have to run. There's going to be tests you deprecate on purpose because it's just too flaky and unreliable, and you take it out of that build. Again, that build, you can have a big suite full of flakier, less reliable tests that you still need to run to at least find out if maybe more complex interactions have regressed. When it comes to that build acceptance test, it should be, again, it's the one you trust. It's the one you trust to take grandma for a walk in the wheelchair. By the cliff's edge, and he's not going to push grandma off.
The next thing that gets in the way of us being productive as developers when it comes to testing is tests that take a long time to run. This might be integration tests that require an emulator, tests that need to run in a particular environment with a particular setup. Or even,
I swear I haven't watched this in like half a year. This is like literally getting into what I just said. We're going to talk about like how reliable a test is. So this is great. I'm gonna let her cook and say it way better than I just kind of did. I think I'm pretty sure she's getting into what I just talked about.
Even local tests, which just happen to have a lot of dependencies and have a lot going on. A test that takes a long time to run is not giving us the feedback that we want from our automated tests. Anything that takes longer than probably a minute is going to cause us to get up, go somewhere else, do something else, or check our email, generally context switch, so that when the result of the test comes in, we can't remember what we were doing and what we're supposed to do about this test result, whether it's a pass or fail.
Yes, let her cook. I agree with this, and I've been brought into places where the client devs will argue with me about stuff like this. They'll tell me that an automated test is crucial, especially for build acceptance. And I'll say no, because it takes too long. The feedback's too slow. Unless the risk is super high. That's where you can balance things out. But I'm more towards what Trish is saying here, in that it should be fast feedback. And that's what you want: fast, reliable, consistent feedback. If those tests break, you want to easily know why. You want to know that when it does fail, that it fails for a good reason, and a clear, easily understandable reason. That other stuff, that's your full regression suite. That's outside of the band of, testing local work, testing a build, etc. Yeah, just cooking.
Long-running tests kill our flow. What we really want to do is run the test, check our assertion, make sure it works. Yes, it does, great, on to the next thing. Or it fails, okay, I better do something about that. We want it to be part of our development flow all the time.
Yes, please. Please. I try so hard to help developers be able to run the tests that we'll write, to get it to run locally, and encourage them during PRs to run them locally. Make sure you can run the tests. Please, please, please. Whether it's, I know unit component is always easier to get running. Please run the integration level tests, the service level tests, deploy, run the API locally, and run those tests that your QA people are writing. Please, 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 please. You can reveal things. You can keep yourself from putting up a PR that's just substandard or has broken something, and then having that awkward, oh, well, now that I ran it in CI, it's broken. It's well, no, it was broken. Again, something was already broken in your code, and you need to fix it. Please run the test. Make it a part of your workflow, to just trust. And here's, to be fair, again, you might be in an org where you have these 25-minute test runs, and you don't want to. And that, again, is a failure. Not a failure. It is a suboptimal testing strategy from the dev organization. You need to probably strip back your test suite for build acceptance. You probably need to pull some stuff off. You probably need to start tagging your tests and saying, okay, I changed this service. I changed the, it's a courses app. I changed the, add a student endpoint. Do I need to run the other tests? Probably not right now, at least. So I'm going to run just all the student tagged tests, right? So that's, again, where another strategy is tagging and organizing your tests well, instead of trying to test everything under the earth in one shot. Is narrowly focused, targeted tests based on changes. Can also just be a super big game changer, but it is more work. It is harder to do.
We don't want to break our flow to wait for the result of a test.
Yes.
What can we do about this? We should be making our tests as fast as possible, of course. That means pushing it down the testing pyramid where possible, turning integration...
Yes, the testing period. Yes, yes. I think this is, didn't Kent Beck also? Didn't Kent Beck, or is it Martin Fowler? Who this is, okay, you should have this, tattooed. You should have this tattooed on your body somewhere, I swear. Yeah, get this tattooed somewhere on you. This is so important. I am interested to kind of look at this, actually. So process chain tests, is that just what they're calling end to end? This is interesting. System tests. So yeah, this pyramid's a little different than the one I'm used to. I'm not gonna really get bent on it. Feature and contract tests. Again, this is interesting. I haven't seen the pyramid done this way. I think it's Martin Fowler. Isn't it Martin Fowler, or is it Kent Beck? Gosh, getting old stinks. Practical, yeah, it was Fowler. Hey, my memory. Let's see here. This is the one. Can we open this in a new tab? This is the one I'm most familiar with. Can we zoom in? Yeah. This is the one I'm most familiar with. Yeah, you move up that stack, you're going to get more integrated. You move down the stack, you're going to get less integrated. You move up the stack, it's going to get, as it's integrated with more pieces, the tests are going to be slower, right? And they tend to be more costly to maintain as you move up the stack. So we get, hopefully we can see with the mouse, yeah. We get into this kind of area here is generally the SDET QA engineer area, and then there's a gray dividing line here. But there's this area that's kind of more developer responsibility. And then I've also seen versions of this with a little cloud at the top. And that cloud is like kind of your exploratory testing, because that's really important to do. And from my experience, there's a lot of value that comes from exploratory testing, doing weird stuff, thinking of things. It's where you get to be creative. And a lot of times you take things from that maybe uncovered something. It becomes a test you run all the time, or it becomes a automated regression test. You could kind of, one thing, not to get too far off on a rabbit trail, this idea that tests can kind of flow down from the top of this when you have that little cloud at the top of exploratory testing, is things will flow down from there like, oh, this should be a written test. This should be a written documented test, whether it's manual or automated. So we document that test. Now we find that test is valuable and a good candidate for an automated test. It then flows down and becomes like an automated integration test maybe. Then we feel like, actually, we don't need to do all this through the UI. Let's mock parts out. And then maybe even further, this is just a full-blown microservice API level test. And then even further, okay, I see you're doing this test in the API. I want to catch it earlier. And you bring it down to the unit test level where it's way cheaper to run, way cheaper to write, technically speaking, right? And you get back into Trish's point of it can be hard to write those tests if you don't write them for testability. It can kind of bite you in the butt. But yeah, this is the more commonly known, but I would put a little cloud on the top here, and put exploratory testing up there. And then again, a lot of modern framework stuff, you've got kind of a component and then a services, like your microservices layer. It's getting into semantics, but generally speaking, and again, I would put components kind of here, and then like your services layer, like your API, you might have like a Go API service that, I don't know, grabs a PDF or something, right? You can test those sort of things without having this UI component. And the size, this might be obvious, the size of this pyramid shows the quantity normally. There's also the ice cream cone anti-pattern. I hope we can find that one. I really hope we can find this one. This one's fun. Ooh, is this it? Is it? Oh, it's not safe. Is it this one? Yes. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this is the software testing ice cream cone anti-pattern. So this was always a fun one to show clients. It's a fun one to show clients because, in all honesty, most orgs that are struggling with their testing are this. They're this right here. They're the ice cream cone anti-pattern. It's from watermelon.com. I'll have to credit them or something. But yeah, it's this idea that generally you don't have a lot of, again, this is like a quantity thing. You don't have a lot of unit tests. You tend to have more integration tests. Like maybe you're waiting till the services are deployed. And then you have a lot of, and a lot is kind of you have a lot of automated UI tests that are going right through the UI, because generally you might have someone who started as a QA engineer, well, a QA analyst who thinks very UI focused. They're your SME and they're great at what they do, but they learn automation because they're either asked to, or they use it as a survival mechanism, which was my case. Like I had to survive somehow, and cover all the things I wanted to cover. And I didn't know any better, right? And so you write a lot of these really flaky automated tests going all through the UI that tend to get deprecated and tend to just fail constantly, and the developers don't even look at it. They say, okay, that's just that flaky automated stuff. Then you have the big fluffy ice cream cone at the top, which is like all this manual testing. And this is if you're really lucky. Sometimes that ice cream cone is literally like a little unit test ice cream cone, and then you have a big fluffy manual test ice cream on top, and your ice cream falls off of your cone. You want to flip that. Most orgs are in this state or worse, right? from a general standpoint, I think on the average, and I think with AI, it's going to get worse actually, because I think people are going to rely on AI to write their testing. I think it's just going to get worse. I think we're going to need more like amazing QA people. But yeah, this is the anti-pattern. I don't know why it always makes me chuckle, and also always makes me want ice cream really bad, like fluffy pink ice cream. It'd just be delicious right now. But this is a great example of where most organizations are. Most software engineering teams kind of tend to veer. Releases tend to be very slow and painful, but you want to get, and hopefully they show a picture of it. If we go back, do they show a picture of, yes, see, okay, this is the one. Yeah, this is the good stuff here. This is the good stuff. Excuse me, got sniffles. But yeah, you see manual session-based testing, automated GUI testing, API integration component. Yeah, this is the cat's pajamas. In fact, I'm gonna save this article because it's dope. We're gonna bookmark this. Sure, we'll put in test automation. This is the one. This is the pyramid I'm most familiar with. I think is the most realistic to today's standpoint. But let's get back to Trish. This is enough rabbit trail. I barely remember how we started here, but oh yeah, because she showed the. I agree. Yeah, flexibility. The tests down at the bottom tend to be more flexible. Reliability. Agreed again. Effort and speed. Yep, it's generally higher effort as you go up, and you tend to get more speed as you go down. These tests up the top tend to be slower and more flaky.
Tests into perhaps a number of unit tests. Tests that don't require databases, network connections, big modules that have a lot of startup time, things that can run quickly. A unit test is not necessarily one test class for a production code class, but it is something which should be able to run very quickly. These tests should also ideally run on our laptop. So again, the focus should be trying to make it run as quickly as possible. Maybe you're going to use something like containers to make your build more reproducible. Ideally, we don't even really want something like that. If your test is validation, for example, you should just be testing input and output and not spinning up lots of different stuff.
Yeah, agreed. A lot of times people feel like those tests are a waste of time. I worked with an org that said they only write integration tests and they don't write unit and component because it's a waste of time. And that was interesting.
Services. So where possible, our tests should be running as quickly as possible, as far down the testing pyramid as possible. We can also use techniques like running tests in parallel where possible. Our build tools usually support this, where we can run our tests in parallel.
Yes, for unit tests. I would be cautious about this. A lot of people think this is the silver bullet they'll write when they, okay, going really quickly. Going back to where's the anti-pattern? I have seen many organizations that instead of changing their process, they keep the cone and then they just say, well, we'll run these in parallel, and they'll eat up some of the ice cream cone and put it here and then just run them in parallel. But they always end up with more problems because for a couple of reasons. The test suite or the tests themselves were not written to be run in parallel. You're going to run into a lot of race conditions because the system, again, you didn't design the testing suite from an integration level. This can have, with unit testing, this is fine. Even component testing, yeah, this is totally fine. Run them in parallel. Run as many threads as you can afford if it makes you fast. For anything above that, actually deployed services, microservices, API, for UI, actually deployed UI, you are going to run into problems with data. You're going to run into problems with race conditions where one thing is touching another thing that you don't want it to. And if one beats the other, well, this test always passes because it's faster. And the other test is just slower and it goes to touch the same piece of data, the same thing. So if you're not crafting these tests to be multi-threaded, if you think the silver bullet is to multi-thread your tests because you're in this anti-pattern, some form of it, I promise you from experience, does not always work. Almost always it is a failure, and it creates new, fresh, and frustrating problems. Again, giving away some secret sauce, pull those tests back. If they're failing, having problems, pull them away. pull them away. If it has to be a manual test, when you go do regressions, it has to be a manual test when you go do regressions. Just life, man. You got to be able to reliably validate a release or a candidate or a deployment. And sometimes that means pulling this back because you're going to slow the devs down. You're going to slow them down and frustrate them. They're not going to want to use your tests. They're going to get deprecated, and people are going to question what you're there for. Okay? Trust me, please. Please trust me.
There are all sorts of other techniques, things like using predictive test selection to only run a subset of tests, that kind of thing. There are things that we...
Did we not just talk about this? Run targeted tests based on what was changed. That is one of the harder things to do because, again, you need to have some design to your test suite. You have to have design for it because if you don't, you can't get these things out of it. You have to just like boil everything. You have to just blow up the, fire all cannons, full power, right? You can't just go, okay, here's our targeted surgical ninja suite where we can go and just test the things we want to test. Instead, it's like, well, we have this big cannon and we just fire it at our app when we want to know if it's broken, and it takes forever to run and it's fragile and it misses the mark sometimes. You want ninja surgical. That means labeling, organizing your tests. And that goes down to fundamentals of just good test writing, organization. If you can't write good tests on paper, you're never going to write a good automated test. I'm sorry. The tools don't matter. Okay. You have to have your fundamentals. And part of that is, what are these tests testing, understanding the system and breaking into parts and being organized. And if you couldn't do that with a manual suite and say, oh, we made changes to this feature and functionality, here's all the manual tests I have, and then you add test automation, you still couldn't do that, then you won't be able to do it with your automated tests. Okay. It's a discipline, it's an organization, and it's a fundamentals problem.
We can do to make our tests run as quickly as possible, and we should be investigating those solutions so that we're not having to wait minutes, hours, maybe even till the next day to find the results of our automated tests.
I've helped clients where it takes that long for them to run their tests. And one gentleman in particular was running their tests on their personal machine. They couldn't get it to run in CI. That was something I did, or not CI, DevOps, because again, I'm violating what this channel is all about. You would be surprised, again, if you go into these organizations that are struggling with testing, you'd be so surprised. And maybe you won't be. Maybe there's someone watching this and they're like, so hopefully this is like therapeutic to them, right? This is like therapy for them. Like, yes, I understand what you're saying. This is all true. This is all completely true. And it's super painful, but you'd be surprised at the goofy, crazy, weird stuff that people do to get testing done because they don't have someone there that has the experience, has the right approach, has a holistic plan built for you, and for your org. They're just going to kind of, again, it's not a dig or attack on them, because I was that person for a long time. I was that person that didn't know what I was doing. It took a long time and experience kind of hitting my head on things. Self-taught. A lot of testers are self-taught, to be fair. And they're self-taught. They don't have the mentorship they need. They're usually overworked, overwhelmed, too many, they're trying to test more things than they should. It's usually a bad balance between development and testers. There's usually way more developers than testers. So, you'll see some bizarre things. And it'll kind of just blow your mind.
That we spent so much time thinking about and implementing. Overall, the answer to the problem of testing slowing us down as developers is to treat testing as a first-class citizen.
Yes,
It
please.
is part of our job. Thinking about what the code should do is, of course, what we do. But since we're going to be thinking about what the code should do, why not write that down somewhere in, say, an automated test, where we can actually check that those assertions and those assumptions are correct all the time. And when someone makes some changes, they haven't broken some behavior that we expected.
Yeah, that's agile testing. That's agile testing, is the idea that it's everyone's responsibility, right? Everyone's responsible for testing. Doing this, I don't know why. Gesturing with my hands. Luckily, this thing's not, it's attached to the desk at distance. It's everyone's responsibility. You don't do the bare minimum of testing as a developer and then pass it on to your testing people. What's up, that onion? Yeah, testing only finds more bugs to fix. It is true. It is true. But I was kind of talking earlier, the passing tests still, they don't prove that there are no defects or issues in the system, right? But yeah, it's everyone's responsibility of quality. It's not just testing. It's not your QA people. It's everyone's responsibility. We're all trying to collaboratively work together to make the best experience for users, the best experience for whoever's consuming our API. I'm beating the same old drum. But it shouldn't be adversarial, right? You shouldn't be in silos. I know those are so like, I'm getting into founder mode here. I'm in founder mode talking about silos, but it's true. You get in these little silos, you got development, you got testers, you got product owners and managers or whatever, and you pass things over the fence to the next silo. It's not the way it should be. But to be fair, if you as a tester, quality engineer, SDET, if you're not advocating, it's really kind of on you. If you're not advocating and trying to be a service to development, be a service to the product manager, be a testing service, be that voice. Push. If you're not part of grooming, ask really, like, please let me be part of grooming. Let me be part of planning. I want to be there. It's going to help. I promise it'll help things be better. Send them to me. Hit up our website, levelupqa.com. I will do 45 minutes for free, 45-minute call with you. Or if I can't go, someone that works for me will be on a 45-minute call, and we'll talk about the things that you can actionably do, the things that we could do to help you. If you're that stuck, bring us in. Thank you so much, that onion, for the follow. I think over on Twitch, right? Yeah, give us a call. But again, I've seen too many teams I've been brought into where testing is adversarial. You're not there to break the system. You're not there to find bugs. You're there to collaborate together to make the best system. It's really hard to do that if you're not a part of grooming, planning. If you're not, here's the one that's a bitter pill. As definition of done. Definition of done should be everything that needs to happen till this thing's sitting in front of the user. That means your DevOps people should honestly, I think, be part of your estimation. What if there's special things they have to do? What if they have to go into AWS and do a bunch of crazy stuff because of the system you've designed? Testing, right? Like, obviously, because that's what this channel is about. This channel is about testing. But yeah, soapbox. Let me push the soapbox away with my foot. Let's let Trisha finish cooking here.
We should also be treating it like a first-class citizen in terms of performance. This is not something that should just kind of like run, maybe when we want to, and it takes as long as it takes, but that's okay because it's over there. No, fast-performing tests are what make us productive.
Yes, so, yes. This is what we've been talking about. I agree 100%. Otherwise, what's the point? This is something I've said many times on Teams or clients have been brought into. What is the point of your tests? What purpose is it? Figure that out. What is it, to prove the system hasn't regressed? Is it to accept a build? Figure out what you want it to do, and then actually make that part of your goals and make that part of the acceptance criteria for your testers. This is what we need to do, or these are the risks we need to cover. Make it clear. Testing should not be a black box. It should be really clear what you're trying to do. If it is performance, then those metrics should be so clear, because performance and load testing, oh my gosh, it's a nightmare, because there's so many people that think that load testing and performance testing is just throwing lots of requests. It's like, what is the predicted, number of concurrent users? And then how do we expect the system to respond under that load? What's the response time? What's the longest that a customer should have to wait? All that stuff is so important, and so many clients are just like, or a lot of testing people that think that they're load or performance testers that don't understand all the nuances. I mean, there's tons of experts and people that can speak better than me about it. Anyways.
So, treat tests as a first-class citizen. Write tests as soon as possible to the time at which you write your production code.
Yes. And like we talked earlier, this is your SDETs and QA engineers and automation engineers as well. Write failing integration level tests at the beginning of the sprint. Don't wait until it's deployed. I'm telling you, this is my secret sauce. Giving away secret sauce for free. Spicy, spicy secret sauce. Write those flippin' tests as soon as possible. Failing tests, here's the thing. If you're an SDET, you're an automation engineer, and you don't know how to create a branch, that's your first problem. But create a branch, okay? Don't be a filthy casual. Use command line, create a branch. Start writing failing tests for the feature that's coming up, right? And tuck that away in a branch, push it, leave it alone until that thing's ready. Keep doing that. Go through all the stories that you're supposed to test. Write failing tests. Write failing documented, handwritten, manual tests, whatever it needs to be. Write those failing tests now. Then, when that thing's actually deployed somewhere, whether it's your own local, if you're lucky enough to, work on a product where you can deploy it locally, and you get your hands finally on that branch, or they deploy it to your QA environment or whatever, now fix those tests. Red, green. It's like a bigger, slower cycle of TDD. Write those tests soon. I know shift left is almost like, again, it's founder mode. It's test. I think there needs to be a new founder mode. There needs to be like some sort of like SDET founder mode or something like maybe it's like testing conference speaker mode or something that's like founder mode for testers, where it's like all this stuff, they are buzzwords, but they work. That's why people like me have had such great opportunities, despite not having a great education, despite being self-taught and just grinding and going for it, is because we've learned that these things just work. Like writing those tests as soon as possible, it's harder. Writing a failing like automated integration test is harder than sitting there on my hands, picking my nose or watching YouTube videos. It is harder. It's a skill. It's just like TDD is a skill that you have to practice and get good at. And it is a form of TDD, right? Again, I call it shifting left. Call it whatever you want. Call it, whatever you want to call it. But practice it, and I promise you, or encourage, if you're a developer or you're a project manager or whatever, or a Scrum master, encourage your testing people like, hey, what do you think about writing these tests then and then fixing them when you have the real thing, and see what happens. Just like do a sprint and see if it helps you get ahead and helps you start thinking about testing earlier. I think it would change things. And it seems so obvious to me because again, it's how I've gotten the opportunities I've gotten. I'm sure many people like me, same thing.
Treat them as first-class citizens in terms of the performance of those tests. And never ever think that the time that you spent thinking about what to test is wasted, because the thinking is the thing that takes the time.
Yes.
And the thinking is the thing that we get paid for anyway. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider supporting the Continuous Delivery channel on Patreon. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Trish. No, yeah. I completely agree with that. Again, I watched this video like 6 months ago, and so it was kind of fresh. Like I remember the ideas. And as I'd kind of mentioned earlier, on this channel, they tend to advocate more for like from the developer. Gosh, intermittent fasting can be really rough. I think it's the magnesium or something. I don't know. But they tend to advocate more towards the developer. Again, if you are a software tester, QA analyst, anything like that, some of these things can seem super duper ultra obvious to you. It's like, duh, we have to do these things. But yeah. So hopefully I'm probably gonna, cut this up a little bit, probably put it on YouTube if it's not totally garbage. Also, I'm just not sure because YouTube keeps complaining about me dropping keyframes, and this is my first time setting up my Nginx RTMP. I don't remember server, so it could be totally garbage. But what I'll do, I've got about a half hour left of time. What I'll probably do, and we'll kick on some tunes. We'll probably do the time I've got left after I take a bio break is I'm going to work on some more automated tests, write some more Cypress tests against the Blaze Meteor page. I did have my technical on Friday. I think it went well. They didn't ask any questions about the tests that I wrote. So hopefully they found them valuable. And even, you know, even if what I am looking forward to is getting some feedback and saying, here's some of the things we wish we would have heard you say or do. When I used to do interviews, when I was I was a QA manager for a little time. This might be controversial. I would literally tell the person the things that, and not in a mean way, but kind of constructive way. Here's the things I would, if I were to hire you for this position, these are the things I would need to see from you and things I would love for you to work on, and then interview with us again in X months or a year. Year, it's a little extreme, but I would say, you know, work on this stuff and come back in a few months. And I actually had people that did that. There was a person that tried really hard and came back and still wasn't really there, but they took the feedback and they did get better. And that was my thought, was like, how do I make this interaction valuable for all parties involved, instead of just like pretending like, oh, you know, pretending like things went really well when maybe somebody wasn't the right fit because of some missing skills that I needed to see. And again, I tried to be really kind and constructive. Like, I would need to hear more confidence when you talk about this. I would need to see more technical skills based around these core things that you're missing that would really keep you from being the ideal candidate. And kind of talk to them about what are the resources to get better at this. Here's a free class on Test Automation University. Really highly suggest you take it. You know, here's a free course on this platform for JavaScript. Get a little stronger with your JavaScript. I need to see more confidence when you're writing JavaScript. Anything like that. I also would do take home, like technical. I would do take home technical. Gosh, my brain. the same thing. Yeah, the take home technicals. I would basically do those. I wasn't a fan of making them do it live, but I would get some really interesting, really interesting submissions for those. So that's what I'll probably do. If I'm a good real streamer, I will update the title, and I'll probably do a bio break and then come back, and I'll fix that stuff when I come back from the bio break. So I'm gonna do a bio break now. Yeah, and BRB. silly bots. Oh wow, apparently I'm that loud. Sorry. Too close to the microphone. Silly bots. Does that mean I'm cool? Does that mean I'm cool if I have bots harassing me? Probably doesn't. These bots probably just harass everybody. Have your viewers been tested? I doubt it, and I've always told these bots I want the worst viewers. Why best? Why do they always say best viewers? Like, what do they mean by best? Like, quantify what you mean by best viewer. I want to understand what the qualifications are. But yeah, last time I left off here with trying to use Cursor to write automated Cypress tests. Everyone can't have the best viewers. You don't know that. I actually was like wrestling with Cursor. I actually found Cursor to try to do things I didn't want to do, try to like suggest tests that made no sense. There's just times that Cursor is so good at knocking out like the really monotonous boilerplate, and then sometimes it's really horrible at generating more tests and generating more test code. It's really interesting. It like does things that'll just seem brilliant and then just do things like, wow, you just did something really stupid. So I don't feel like there's so many people that are using it. They're like, oh my gosh, it's a silver bullet. And like, yeah, I feel like it's more like having an intern with you that swings for the fences really big, and sometimes they knock it out, and sometimes you accidentally accept what they're trying to generate for you, and it ends up just being more trouble because you're having to like untangle what they did then, or just delete the whole block or whatever. So many times it'll generate something really poorly for me, and I'll make the mistake of trying to just fix it, and then the test keeps like failing for different reasons, and I realize I just need to write this myself. And then there's times like it knocks out all this really simple boilerplate, like duh, simple things. So it's definitely an assistant, and it's definitely a sporadic kind of, maybe not always fully trustworthy. But I've only got about 20, unfortunately, for this. So I'm gonna look at my to-dos. This is a testing suite that I wrote for a technical that I did last Friday. I'm just gonna keep working on it. I'm probably gonna think of another project. There's a game that I've always wanted to build that I think I just may end up doing and just write it on stream. There's a app for parents that I've had an idea for. I thought about writing that on stream. I just gotta think of what platform I want to do. I'm thinking about doing it in Flutter. The only thing is my MacBook Pro is the one set up for Flutter. I don't have a capture card on this Pop! OS desktop that I use for streaming. So that onion, it's kind of both. These are API tests, but Cypress allows you to test components. So think of like a React component. It allows you to test components in isolation. It allows you to test deployed microservices. It allows you to test UIs. But it also, when you write your UI tests, you can do something called a site intercept. So for example, these are my API tests that I wrote against this BlazeMeter site. In this case, yes, we have some, these are front-end tests technically at this level, but we have some intercepts. What intercepts are is when you look at like the services tab in DevTools on your browser, you're going to see all like the XHR requests and things like that. What Cypress will allow you to do is intercept them and interact with them. You can say like mock in a particular like JSON body that you need the perfect cart to always come back from your cart service for a particular test, but you don't want to test your carts. You maybe want to test some interaction of that cart. In this case, we're only using intercepts to make sure that the tests are aware of the app state. So for example, we're intercepting, a better example would probably be sign up. We're intercepting this sign up call, this post call that happens when a user fills out the sign up form. And we're also waiting on this call that I'm not sure completely what it does, but it always happens when we open the modal. So I use it to make sure that the test doesn't try to interact with the modal until all the backend things are happening. So again, what's great about Cypress and Playwright, both allow you to hook into service level app state, the things that normally you would have to do lots of weird stuff to be aware of. Here you can kind of hook into them. You can purposely make a call fail. You can mock in different states. You can mock in different JSON bodies. Again, to always like return the perfect cart. You intercept that call and then you can mock out or stub out what you want that call to do for you. And again, in this case, we're just using it for waits, but I've used intercept to do powerful, incredible things to really isolate UI components to sort of test different requirements without having to do weird stuff like trying to purposely get another endpoint to fail to see, well, what happens if like this microservice goes down? It's like, well, I can tell you exactly how the component or the system's going to generally act if I do that. So that's where you'll see that this is oh no, it's trying to generate code. Stop. These are pure API tests. I'm testing the sign up and the login endpoints purely headlessly, sending basically like Postman or XHR requests or Xcurl. You can think of it that way. Then at this level, there's a level up from the services. I'm going to test the UI while hooking into those services to make sure I'm aware of app state so that my test doesn't move too fast, since these UI tests can move so much faster than a human user, right? So when they go to interact with the page, you as a human wouldn't almost never be able to click fast enough for the app to be in a bad app state where it's not ready for you to interact with it, where the automate tests are just clearly faster. So using these implicit waiting states where you're looking at the state of the app helps make these tests more stable and more realistic without making them too slow, because it's at the pace of the system. There's no like thread.sleep. It's a what I would call a implicit wait rather than an explicit wait. Don't wait 20 seconds. Instead, wait until this service is done and returns a 200, I could say. Or in this case, I'm just waiting till the call resolves whether it passes or not. So that's my long, my long explanation, just in case you're not familiar with like what Cypress is. Cypress and Playwright are probably the two biggest integration testing platforms or tools or frameworks out there. All the different implementations of Selenium WebDriver I feel like are becoming less and less popular because it uses the old WebDriver protocol, where I believe Playwright at least uses the DevTools protocol. And then Cypress kind of runs a node server that will inject JavaScript, but I think it also uses the newer DevTools protocol that newer browsers are built on. So these frameworks like Cypress and Playwright tend to not support older browsers since they use the web browser protocol. And then the new browsers, a lot that are forked off of Chromium, use the DevTools protocol. So yeah, that's my overly long explanation of that, just in case I have no idea what your experience is with the testing tools and I may be telling you things you already know. But this is Cypress written in TypeScript. Again, I wanted to play around with Cursor because I had a viewer suggest it. And there are times like where Cursor and I are really good friends, and there's times where Cursor is like slowing me down because it's generating garbage code. Generating unrealistic garbage code for test cases that are not realistic. And other times it's like it nails it on the head. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at, where I'm just going to write more tests for this. And this isn't, most of my client work I could never do on stream because I sign non-disclosure. Because most people watching probably aren't aware, I do I own my own consulting firm for software testing and quality. And again, most of the client work I could never show because it's non-disclosure. A lot of times it's for fintechs and mid-level banks, and things like that. So. Nice. I mainly do backend stuff, so my test usually just consists of finding edge cases with the incoming data. Nice. Yeah. There's some of that I can do at this level. But what we kind of showed earlier, I don't know if I still have that stuff up. When we think of the job of the developers testing, where there's kind of like this, in fact, this is the good version on here. I like this one better. My eyes. Like we talk about unit testing, it's usually like a developer responsibility, and then we get to even component. This is where it's a little gray. I've been on orgs where we will QA will be in charge of component, but then and this integration layer can get kind of fudgy too, right? That's like databases and stuff. But automated API tests, we're talking deployed API, and we're not testing the services or the interfaces. I feel like then you get to this top layer, this is like all QA, SDET territory. So you're probably talking about this this lower layer, which in my opinion is actually more valuable and there should be more of it. But a lot of teams are not in this state. A lot of teams and orgs are in the ice cream cone anti-pattern, as we kind of talked about earlier. Is this really and it sometimes doesn't even look like this. Sometimes they don't even have automated UI tests, usually written in Selenium WebDriver, or sometimes possibly written in Playwright in some whatever implementation of Playwright, like whatever language they're working, or Cypress if they're Node and JS or TypeScript normally. And then again, maybe they've got some Postman tests for their integration, and then they've got some sorely neglected unit tests, and then most of their bulk of their testing is going to be the fluffy ice cream at the top. A lot of manual testing going through the UI, and as I kind of talked about earlier, that could be for a couple different reasons. Because I want to be careful when I talk about people that are in this position where they're very UI focused, because I used to be that person before I had more opportunity to learn test automation, to get deeper into the stack, to shift left more. Is this idea that you only think of the application as an interface for the user, which isn't a bad thing, and you actually want your SME type QA analysts to think that way. You want them to think like the customer and think like the users. But when you get deeper from the service level, like an API or microservice, you want then your automated people to think about, they're really your first consumers of your microservice. And so you want them to be thinking that way with their testing, and you should respect the things that they find and do, and say like, well, no one's going to do that, or with your service, or send that type of request. Like, well, we should still handle it. What if someone's building a new UI for your microservice? They want to use it. You sell it to them. You should handle everything and make sure it's informative and useful for them, so they can bubble those errors up and have them take the shape they want in the UI, right? But this is much more common, especially when I'm brought into a client. This is actually would be a really good state compared to a lot of times it's just the unit tests and then this big fluffy manual test. Maybe they've got a couple of fragile UI tests, but that to kind of go back, many people, you have these people who are QA engineers or analysts, and they come in and they're self-taught and they're very UI focused. But the problem is then they don't think of the application holistically through that stack, like we see from this, right? Where the bulk of that manual testing, I wouldn't call it session, I'd call it exploratory. You've got an exploratory layer, and then all your testing kind of flows down from there, in the sense that it can get promoted to those lower layers, like the layer that you would write as a maybe unit level test or a component level test. It should be able to trickle down, because it's going to be this one doesn't show, but basically as you go up this pyramid, it becomes more integrated, slower, and more expensive, and you're generally more expensive to maintain. You go deeper into the stack, generally faster, generally it gets faster. Generally it gets cheaper to write and cheaper to maintain, because you need less resources. To do this testing at the very top, you need a fully integrated system pretty much. Everything's deployed, AWS, all your money is just the cha-ching. Unit tests, you should be able to run them on a laptop, right? Basically, maybe with containers, whatever. I'm not going to get into semantics of tech stack, right? But in this case, those tests should be so easy to run and so fast and so reliable that you should be able to run them all the time as part of build acceptance. Soapbox deactivated. And my yakking is making me run out of time because I get back to my day job. This is not my day job. My day job is consulting. I gotta get back to getting some work done for a client. But the BlazeMeter site, let's see. Is it Blaze Demo? Blaze? I think it's Blaze Demo. I think that was the site. Yeah, I don't know why. Whoops, this isn't it either. No. I'll just grab the URL that I'm writing the test against. And I'm really conflicted. I almost didn't turn... Oh, Demo Blaze, bruh. Bruh. Stop. New keyboard, skill issue. Let's see. Yeah, my yacking's making me run out of time. But this is the page, or the app. And the best part about it is just the fact that, not test manager, I want dev tools. There we go. Control-Shift-I, I should remember that. Because there's actually like a service layer. That's why it's kind of superior to the Sauce Labs page. I'm surprised we're not seeing the fetch. Bootstrap. This login, I don't remember what the login is, so we'll just do a sign up. But the beautiful part is it does have a API or service layer. We'll make up a good password that we'll never use. Sure. Hey. Yeah, you can see this post request was sent with a payload, and they're base64 encoding the password. That was a fun thing to figure out how to kind of tackle in regards to the fact that from the API standpoint, I need to base64 encode that password, keep track of it, and then when I hit the UI, I need to have the unencoded version that the user is going to actually put into the login field here. So yeah, we dealt with that with a little bit of code in our commands. So in this case, whatever password gets passed into this Cypress command gets base64 encoded and then sent to the sign up endpoint. Same with login, same thing. We're going to send a base64 encoded version of that password because we may go on to use that password. Say a really good example is the auth spec tests, where we test sign up by first headlessly signing someone up new. We have that random password, which was we generated using Faker. And that random password then needs to be kind of clear, plain text when the user puts it into the password field, because then the service itself is going to base64 encode it. But that's why we had to do it. We almost impersonate what the component is doing here to sign up first, so that we know that user is now a valid user of that system, and then sign them in. But yeah, I yacked too much and I ran out of time. Oops. That's okay. It's okay to me, because I need to get back to day job. But these should all still be passing. A little chuggy. Yep, those are still passing, so we know that's good. For our login spec. And I numbered these because, at least for as long as I've been using Cypress, that's the only way to get it to run the tests in sequence. If you do npx cypress run, you'll headlessly run all the tests that are there, all the spec. Or in this case, in the runner, you're just going to run, just run the spec file that you picked. And yeah, this is all good. We got an auth token, which is really kind of our main assertion there. If we post valid credentials to the login endpoint, we expect to get an auth token. These tests are a little more complex, but again, trying to like test the API first, build on that, go from the service layer, then go to the UI. Yeah. Again, they're not exhaustive either. There's lots more I could do with login. Try login with, that's probably what I'll do next time, is I'll write some login tests that test more permutations and variations that we would want to make sure. I always try to leave myself notes, to-dos. Cursor sometimes tries to write to-dos for you. It does some goofy stuff, but that's okay. Again, I'm kind of testing it out, low stakes here. It's not like this is really crucial code. This code's literally just to be able to demo to clients, because I'm mostly under non-disclosures and can't show off any of the stuff that I write. So this is just to prove like, hey, I'm not a dummy. I know how to write automated tests from the integration level and up. But yeah, I ran out of time today. I had fun doing like a reaction discussion video about another video, and I know that's so like the meta for a while has been reaction discussion, but it is kind of enjoyable and fun. And I'll be excited for the day that maybe there's a few more people on that can kind of talk about their thoughts and experiences with the topic in the video. That'll be not really nice. That's me being possibly a little delusional, thinking that anyone would actually enjoy what I'm doing. It's very presumptuous that anyone would care and give a crap. But that's okay. That's okay. But yeah, I will be back tomorrow, likely in the afternoon, US Eastern time. Things like that. Probably writing more tests, maybe kind of reviewing and going through a video that I find interesting that's worth discussion. But yeah, appreciate that, Onion, if you're still there. Appreciate the follow. Hopefully it was interesting and enjoyable. And some of our usual people were not on, and that's okay. There is a community for everything, to the detriment sometimes of the internet. No, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. I really do. It was nice to have somebody. There's some days I have like 5 or 6 people in here, and there's some days, because I literally just started streaming this type of content last week. I have experience streaming. I used to stream Terraria speedrunning. I used to stream, I had a band. We'd stream bluegrass music. But this is my first time doing kind of my day job as a stream. I feel like this is something that would be beneficial to me regardless. If like 2 people, 3 people watch, I'm just going to get better at my day job. And that's, it's beneficial to me. People enjoy it and learn from it, then it's a double benefit. So yeah, hopefully that's what it ends up being for people, and they learn something new about testing or about a tool. I want to do like accessibility at some point and talk about the accessibility tools for accessibility testing, like people with disabilities. I want to do a Playwright versus Selenium IDE stream at some point. But yeah, I need to go. I have to work. So thanks for hanging out. I hope everyone has a great day. I'll probably see for someone's watching this later. I will be online tomorrow around the afternoon, US time. So later.